Holy crap! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Ah! Let's go! My people, my planet needs me.
Hello and welcome. My name is Samuel Ray, also known as Dr. Sam, and recently I decided kind of on a whim to buy myself a racing steering wheel controller for my PC. So I went ahead and got myself the Logitech G920, pretty much an entry level, like the entry level. That's not quite as expensive as people's usual go-to G29 model. But I've been dabbling in some sim racing game. I had a passing interest in them a long time ago, so I happen to have a copy of Project Cars 2 on my Steam library. So I reinstalled that and have been messing around a little bit in the single-player career mode, which apparently it's one of, if not the best single-player career mode in currently available racing sims on PC. But essentially, I have been messing around in that when I have the time, and this was the session where I got that feeling of, I got it. I think I understand the appeal. And essentially, it was just something happens later on that you'll see that really gave me that thrill of the race and really just made it sink in how fun racing can be. So I started off this here is just the qualifying portion of the event, so to speak, where you get about, I think it was about 15 minutes to just do repeated laps around the track, trying to get the best lap time that you can get. And the whole point of that is so that you take your best time that you can achieve and compare against everyone else's best times, and that determines your starting positions in the race proper. That's why everyone's spaced out, so it's harder to interfere, right? And so then you just keep going around the track trying to hit your best times. So I was doing just that. I was going around the track. I started off with manual transmission because my race wheel has paddle shifters, but I found that I think just because I'm so not used to how steering works, I wasn't really able to get a good enough feel for just the handling, right? Cornering, braking, doing that while also getting used to managing the gears manually is just really, really difficult. Because like in real life, unless you drive stick often, drive manual, it doesn't come naturally to you, right? I have been driving for quite a while. I would say about 17, 18 years. And I'm an excellent driver, I would say, on automatic transmission cars. I have never once been in a collision on the road. I have never once caused an accident. I have avoided more accidents than I've come close to causing because my mother trained me to be a very defensive driver. And I also think that the act of driving really synergizes well with my Tourette's syndrome because it engages my brain in all capacities. Like, I have to use sight, sound. Obviously, I'm usually listening to music or podcasts or something like that, but not loud enough that I can't hear the road or, the other cars around me. But you're just using all your senses in order to be aware of the space around your car. Now here, I totally messed up. I just totally spun out. Well, not full spin. I actually was able to salvage that, but it was a little difficult. And I was still running manual at this time. So, all these cars are passing me up because I'm not yet efficient with my shifting, knowing how much to downshift according to what type of turn I'm taking, how much I'll have to slow down to go around that turn, and so on. So, you know, I at a certain point decided to switch to automatic because that's what I drive in real life. So I could focus more on my racing lines, my cornering, managing my speed the way I do real cars that I drive. That way my skills can translate over a little more naturally while I get used to applying them in a racing format rather than a just everyday driving format. Also, an interesting aside, I really like this game engine and how, like you saw when I went off into the gravel, now the back of the car is dirty. It's a nice little detail for a game that is relatively old to my knowledge. I'm not sure when Project Cars 2 was released, but it definitely was somewhere around 10 years ago, I think. This game looks great for that age. Racing simulators definitely do a good job with the graphics, I would say. Especially since they're not trying to do anything, you know, abnormal, right? Fantastical. So, but it does look like it actually wore off. That's an interesting detail. So wait, so the dirt just kind of goes away after a bit? Huh, didn't notice that. Either way, back on to the topic. It was after I switched to automatic that I was really able to start getting efficient with my driving, because that was one less thing I had to deal with, but it allowed me to put a little more focus on the technique, right? And I just really enjoyed the process of getting better and better with each lap. I was really trying to just get that good feel. I think that's another thing that ties in well with my Tourette's is flow. I enjoy things where I can take my time, hit a good flow, and then get better at that flow. That's why I really like, in terms of like my fighting game preference, I always like the slower, more methodical ones where I can mostly at my own pace get a feel for the opponent, where I'm allowed to play more defensively and kind of get a feel for them. But most fighting games nowadays disallow that style of play, so I've kind of drifted away from them pretty hard. And racing here is just one of my most recent, I guess you could say, fixations. I don't know if I necessarily hyperfixate, but it's definitely a new appreciation for it. I've actually been enjoying watching highlight videos from real life races and such. Now, one thing here is this is in the career mode, the UK Junior Cup, so it's definitely slower cars than the high profile stuff like F1, Le Mans, GT3 and the like. But that's one thing this game does well, is with the career mode you get to start off with lower horsepower cars, get used to driving and the technique, and as you gradually work your way up through the different racing disciplines, then you're able to, or not disciplines, but I guess you could say classes of racing, then you're able to get to the faster stuff as you get better, which I feel like every sim racing game should have a serviceable career mode, especially since people may not always have the time or desire to race online. I certainly haven't been racing online against other people because I haven't yet gotten used to sim racing. So something like this is just invaluable for helping me get used to racing at all. So it's definitely been something I've been having a lot of fun with in my limited time doing it thus far. There is another video I already released of my brother, Prime, and I messing around in it. This very same game with just different car classes and types in VR. And that's another thing to note. In this session, I was solely using VR. I happen to have a HTC Vive that doesn't get a whole lot of use, and honestly, VR in this game it's so immersive in the best way. Like, I think VR, where you're sitting in the seat, right? The driver's seat, the cockpit, what have you, it's just made for that kind of stuff. And, you know, even though this replay is from the third-person perspective, when I was playing, I was in the first person sitting in the car in front of the steering wheel, and being able to look around from inside the car really opens things up a little bit. It's a good middle ground, because I do feel like first person with just a static camera angle looking forward at all times doesn't help with that spatial awareness. You are kind of lacking your ability to know what's in the periphery. Aside from, of course, the rear view mirrors, which do work when you're inside the car, so that's a nice touch. But still, it was pretty cool to be able to turn my head and see, like, especially if I was running up next to another car. So yeah, like, honestly, I was just really enjoying the experience. A lot of fun. Like, here you can tell my driving became a bit cleaner. The way I was handling around the corners, the way I was accelerating and decelerating. Obviously, I'm no pro in this game, so there were little mistakes to be made, but I definitely got more efficient with the corners. I trimmed down using recut software for the qualifying portion here, just because I didn't want it to be the full 15 minutes in the lead up to the actual race itself. But unfortunately, that software does cut down a lot of the cornering, because, well, that's when the car engine is at its quietest, because you're not accelerating. So it kind of reads that as the portions to chop out, unfortunately. Well, now we're getting into the race proper. I started off the race in second position, right behind pole position, due to my fastest lap time during qualifiers, placing me in that spot. So it was somewhere near the end of the session where I just hit my stride and got my fastest time. But something that happened during the race proper was that I actually ended up getting the fastest time out of all of the racers, me and the AI racers, even compared to the qualifying portion, the qualifying laps. Now, there was a little bit of some slightly aggressive driving there. Fortunately, at this level of racing in the career mode, it's not super strict with penalties. I think the only real penalties are if you really shove someone purposefully, or if all four tires leave the road. So you can kind of curb it a little bit if you only two tires get off the road. But obviously doing that does impact your traction negatively and can cause you to lose control, depending on how well you're able to handle that. Like you'll notice here, I do let two wheels get off the curb there so that I can cut that corner as tightly as I was able to. Something I've seen much more experienced racers do in the last few weeks. This guy kept trying to come up on the inside, and while there was a little bit like minor scraping, I wasn't trying to shove him away. But something I did notice about my racing during the proper race here was that I kind of developed a habit similar to what I've seen described of a racer named Max Verstappen, who is an F1 Formula 1 racer driver. He is apparently known for being aggressively tunnel visioned on his racing lines. And apparently he does get a lot of practice in sim racing games, particularly F1 2024. So when he's not racing and practicing in the actual car, he's racing and practicing in the F1 simulator. But I ended up kind of being similarly tunnel visioned on my racing line. So when one of these AI drivers was trying to cut in and, take the spot, I would kind of give them a little bump if they came into my line. I just found that a little bit funny, considering that he's a super experienced F1 driver, considered one of, if not the fastest drivers in the world of F1 racing, and then I ended up with a similar habit. Now there I kind of went off-road for a bit, but something that you'll notice is as long as going off-road slows you down, it doesn't seem like this game really penalizes you for it. Out there, see, the AI was trying desperately not to hit me while I was just focusing on my line, and they ended up going off-road. That's one of those things that isn't going to happen as often when you're racing other people. They may challenge you a bit more. So it's a habit I may need to break in the future. But for the time being, I was just enjoying racing in career mode, and this was the first race where it really, really clicked. I did notice at a certain point I was getting faster and faster with my corner. I wouldn't hit the brakes quite as much. Like here I would start the brake early, then turn in, and then cut this corner as tight as I could while accelerating. My technique was evolving as I was racing, which again is something I very much enjoy the process of. It's kind of zen-like, really, to do something like this where my brain is allowed to hyper-focus in, and all the aspects of it just keeps my brain engaged. It's when I'm doing stuff like that, for example, my Tourette's tics happen the least, because my brain is too focused and too engaged for the synapses to fire off, their little extra electric discharges and cause the tics to happen. So it's stuff like this that I'm discovering is kind of my zen thing. Some people have other games that are their zen thing, like their farming games, like your Stardew Valleys and Harvest Moons, or their, visual novels, or Animal Crossing type games. Generally speaking, the genre referred to as cozy games. For a lot of people, that's their zen thing. Their brain is able to just kind of do their thing on autopilot without having to think too complex on what they're doing. For me, when I was playing this, I noticed my brain wasn't having its most complex thoughts. I was mostly able to just kind of feel things out. You saw there, I went a little too off-road on the first part of that S-curve. I think they call that a chicane in racing. And yeah, definitely. And then here, I went off-road too. And something I found interesting, obviously you can hear in the audio, is starting to catch up to me, right? And I could kind of feel the pressure of being in first place and having to hold that lead the whole time. It really does put some pressure on you mentally, because you don't have anyone to draft to help speed you up, right? Getting into the slipstream behind them directly in order to speed up beyond what you could accelerate alone. You're having to drive unaided, and you need to drive perfectly, pretty much, in order to be able to hold that lead. So that's an interesting, psychological aspect of the race that I really felt here in this race, because I was actually trying to win since it's the career mode. Something I just noticed is that there's markers on the side of the road in this track that counts down to the turn. It's like 2 lines, then 1 line, and then the turn arrow. I find that interesting. Okay, now this was interesting because this was the last lap right here. It begun at right here. I got passed up by that other car, and then the operator guy, I forget what they call him, this tech, he's like, okay, this is the last lap, push through, you gotta pass him up on this one to win it. Something along those lines, and the tension shot up, because now I'm trying to figure out, okay, can I get close enough to draft him, and then where do I use that to slingshot around him and try to overtake? When can I pass? Do I take him in the corner? Do I just drive safe and try to stay behind him and potentially get second? And driving in first for the whole race up until the very end, and then having to slowly fight my way back up in front of him like that with technique, and then hold my lead early. You saw there, I braked a little less because I didn't want to slow down so much and let him pass me again. It really changes the way you're thinking in the moment. And my heart rate actually did increase a bit, and I started to get that feeling of a thrill. Like I actually experienced the thrill of racing in full here. And that's when it clicked, and I realized, okay, this is why people love racing. This is the experience that makes it for them. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to share that with you, and just I may continue to play some racing games going forward, honestly, and share replays here on the channel, especially if y'all like it. So if you enjoy this kind of thing and you want to join me in my journey into the world of racing without putting myself in danger with real racing, hit like and subscribe, and let me know, what are your favorite racing games to play. This is going to be a no judgment zone, so whether it's an arcade style racing game like what I grew up on, Need for Speed and Crazy Taxi and the like, or a more simulator style game like this one, or I don't know, Assetto Corsa, iRacing, whatever, let me know what you play, what you enjoy, or if you have any kind of interest in any of those. Yeah, just let me know. Share your thoughts with me. This has been Dr. Sam, and I will see you next time. Later.